Hello, welcome to another episode of Constitutionalist Podcast. I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard. That's L-E-N-A-R-D. It looks French. It's not. It's Leonard without an O. Thank you for tuning in. As Graham Norton used to say on his show, let's get on with the show! Hello, gang. Welcome to Season 3. February, the season will roll into Season 4. In June of 2026, we'll be rolling into Season 4. Hard to keep it all straight. Where's the time gone? But this special segment intro is for February specials. I'll be running 2 a week rather than 1 special a week on Wednesdays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays in February to get caught up on some of the interviews. And as Graham Norton currently says, he used to say, let's get on with the show. And I use that normally, but he uses now, and I'm going to borrow from him again. Let's get some guests on. Warning, this episode contains some audio and or video glitches. It was not your equipment. Joining me today is Stan Kurtz. Kind of rhymes with megahertz, but not spelled anything like it. It's K-U-R-T-Z, right? So I guess we're going to make you Stan KTZ for short.
Sure.
A new measurement, the Kurtz. What are we measuring? I don't know, but we'll figure out something.
Wow, that's actually very creative. I've never heard that before. That has me thinking. That's amazing.
That's just the way my weird OCD brain works.
All right, well, I'll take it. I'll take and leverage any cool style brain I can interact with. That's great.
So, from your week connected via Podmatch, and on your bio, it talks about hidden patterns, disruptions, stressors, and interferences affecting everything from cognition to behavior to physical performance. I've had Health Weeks, February 2025. I've had on health professionals before that and after that. So I was eager to have another health-related episode to talk to you about this. But before we do that, let's do the, usual, where were you born and raised? Where are you now? Any fun places or significant places you've been to in between? How much time did you spend in prison and for what?
Yeah. I mean, do you want me to start with that one, or which do you want me to answer first?
Dealer's choice.
Yeah. All right. So I born in the East Coast. My parents came over from Eastern Europe, and what ultimately happened to me that was remarkable in the early parts of my life is that I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and I was always interested in her every time I went over to my aunt's house. And, she had leads that were plugged into her, and I didn't know, but she had cancer at the time. And I was 6 when she passed. And I remember it specifically that, looking up on my aunt, when I said, can I go see Bubby? And she looked at my dad and said, you didn't tell him. And that was, I knew the dynamics of everything going on, which is very interesting. My intuition was like, oh, she's embarrassed and hurt and mad, and he's done this before because they're, brother and sister. And she had that brother and sister and he didn't say anything. So he kind of froze, and I saw like guilt, shame in him. But I knew that I had seen my grandmother for the last time. That was all at like 6. So our intuition, this thing that comes in, is really powerful. And I've had a lot of moments like that where I observe something, but there's this big download that's in it that has nothing to do with my education. And And later, when I was 10, the person who I'd say understood me the most was my mom. And that was like a safe place to feel normal because I definitely have a different brain, different approach, different thought process, I think, than many. And I didn't realize it, but I just, because I just felt sort of alone in it. But looking back, it just makes tons of sense. But anyway, she was diagnosed with lung cancer, and I was home most of the time while watching her degrade across her traditional path that she went on. She went to hospitals and got chemo and radiation, and I just watched her turn into something else and ultimately pass. And that was my first sort of real big trauma in my life was around that. And but it was all these things were there in hindsight to wake me up and to not be in a box when it comes down to things, to really think for myself and use observations to not necessarily do what others were doing, because that didn't work out
Yeah.
twice.
In
That
a
didn't work out twice.
society that is more about touchy-feely,
Yeah.
right? Oh, you're again. Say like we're back to pre-Jesus revolution. That's why I think now we've got Jesus Revolution 2 going on. The hippies of that time, the if it feels good, do it, emotion and fun and all about me. More people now, like then, are waking up. Oh, wait a minute. You can't just stumble through life on emotions.
Yeah.
The Bible itself says the fool who basically emotional at his left hand and the wise, more thoughtful person on the right hand. It foresaw all our times. I mean, the prophecy is there. And finally, I think more are waking up like you did, thankfully, at a very early age. Some, you did it at 6, some are finally at age 60
Yeah.
getting a realization.
Well, I guess I was blessed with the gifts of losing people, and really everything that happens, I really do see there's a message in it, and there is a blessing. We don't notice it at the time, and that's why we call things trauma, because we fight it. And if you look at sort of even nature biology, the heart is incredibly developed. It gives incredible truths to you, and it understands things at a level that the mind does not. And the mind itself physiologically seems to be under attack in so many ways today. There are biological things in the blood that are holding back from its full potential. There are missing nutrition and missing bacteria in the body that are holding it back from its full potential. So it's like the evolution of the brain is not going to be at the same level as the heart. And the heart is very powerful and sends incredible messages that are not understandable all the time in the head. And what I tell people is, if you want to know if you're under the influence of your brain not being at the same level as your heart, you'll notice it in pain, because pain is a signal that what you're thinking is not true, is not actually a full truth. Your heart knows the truth. Your brain hasn't figured it out yet. And it takes us longer. And sometimes over time, like you can you can hate your ex, or you can, in the same my case, you can grieve your mom for 40 years, and suddenly you're okay living that way. And you realize that the things that you did after she passed, in my case, the things I did after I passed made me a better person, and it made me have gifts of compassion, and also the way I think is different. I wouldn't have had that if it wasn't for my mom. So to honor her journey, to honor her being in my life, the honor that I believe God's in all things, including that, I don't have to endorse the cancer, but I do see it as a pawn used in the game that God uses to educate me. And he's tricky, because he's always doing it in a way that isn't obvious, and that's the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to decipher these things. So I keep my mom, a picture of my mom's on my desk. She's here all the time. I bring her up in discussion, almost every day. So the love I have continues, and you have an image of my mom in your mind, so I'm giving her life in a way, in honoring. So if you stop believing your thought, mom's dead, and I have, because I have a lot of experiences of her still in my life. So that whole dead thing was a thought. there's a transition, don't get me wrong, but the idea what we think about dead is what actually caused my heart to hurt. And I did it really, really strongly because I was against that process. If she didn't die when she did, I wouldn't have married when I did. I wouldn't have had my child that ended up having autism when he did, and I wouldn't have met a researcher that was profoundly important in my life in the work that I do today because she died a year after I met her. And she was also sick, just like my grandmother was sick, and I didn't know it. I didn't know she was sick. I met her, she spent her entire life from 1960 when she made a discovery until 2005 when she passed. She was constantly trying to educate people on what she found that saved her daughter in the 1960s. So autism, my son's diagnosis with seizures and other things, and somebody saying he's it's a lifelong thing, that made me, based on my past, say I'm not ready to stand for this, and I want to see if there's something else besides the traditional. And the traditional was like, we don't know what causes it, but we know it's not treatable. That already logically can't be true. So in other words, you don't know what caused it, but you know that it's not treatable. That's impossible unless you can show me a gene set. But you can't. And the fastest growing genetic condition is 1% per 100 years. And there is a huge increase no matter how you look at it. You can't deny there's an increase. You don't see
right. The causes can still be debated and argued, but yeah, there's no denying that the rate is
it's not genetic.
It's not huge.
Yeah,
huge increase.
And if you think that there can be a huge increase in genetic conditions, then where are all the Down syndrome kids? We see autism everywhere. Down syndrome is pretty much the same. So there is a genetic condition, and then there's something else. So this is a something else category, and since it's a something else, and we don't know what it is, how can you say we can't treat it? So,
a couple things.
Yeah,
what you said about the early loss. I spoke with Kathy Garland the other day, and she's, quote, a suffering coach. I also talked with someone else regarding purpose after loss.
There you go.
All the same theme here. And what you said about your mother in my A Short Story, A Lasting Legacy book, I discussed that too, right? They're not really gone if we keep their memory alive. Their legacy alive helps drive us, give us purpose, bring meaning to other people's lives. Their death isn't in vain then. It is in vain if we allow them to be forgotten.
What's also interesting too, I do look at the opposites a lot, and what I find is that our relationship with the loved ones of the past often could be better in some ways. Like I talk about her more today than I did when she was alive, and I get to reflect on things without discussion, argument, debate.
Unfortunately, so we take them for granted when they're here.
And that's a human thing. When I go to funerals, you can see how it's like I never heard that, or I never knew you felt that way. So we wait until someone passes before we start to really deeply evaluate. So there's lots of benefits that we get when somebody passes. That's a truth, and we don't like to admit to it, and we think that we need grief in order to love, and it's just not true. Grief is optional. And we can spend time thinking about, how can I love her more today? How can I have her in my life today more today? And that's what I like to spend my time with. But what that did is it fueled me when it came down to taking a look at what was going on with my son. And it pushed me into doing research myself. And I found that there were 750 studies in the medical literature that showed that these kids were sick. And with that, I was able to develop an approach that worked for him. So he came out of the condition like completely, not only just off of a diagnosis, but he's an amazing human today. And that wouldn't have happened had those things not happened to me in my childhood. And today I basically work with just about any quote unquote condition. I don't care. I don't diagnose anything, but if somebody comes in, I don't even care what they have. If they want to enter into research that is the mindset that we're talking about and apply this in their life, they can come in here and learn this. And we have tools that we've pulled from all over the world, tools that from Africa and from the Amazon and from the 1800s, technologies that were taken, that we get to sort of bring back to life. And that's the mindset that I use in this research in helping to figure out what our real potential is. Because if you have attention processing issues, if you have brain fog and things like that, there's usually a biological cause, an actual root cause to these things. And rather than name it, I'm interested in unraveling the underlying things that are holding people back from having their full potential. And if I show you, let me see if I can share. I'm going to send you a request to share. I'm going to show you a couple things, and I'm going to relate it to what we just talked about.
Okay. Yeah. All the more reason for people to check out the episode, obviously, at BitChute, Brighteon, Daily Motion in France, Rumble, or YouTube, because you're going to share. There will be a visual. This will be.
I'll talk about the visual.
Yes,
we're talking about. Okay, I'm going
to
talk
about. We're
carried
carried on 25 plus audio only channels. So
okay, good
vocalize as much as you can.
So what I'm going to show you, and I'll show it to you in words as well, is that we did brain scans. And what we found in the brain scans of people that had attention issues, brain fog, also immune dysregulation. If you were to look at this, imagine a visual in this case that I'll talk about. We're looking at a visual of the top-down drawing of a brain. It's a circle. There's a nose in the front. And there's green in the middle back quadrant, this is theta activity, which is slow activity. You don't necessarily want a high amount of slow activity. But the green shows normal amounts of slow activity in this person that had attention problems and brain fog and stomach pain. And the front, as you start to go in the front, there's a yellow color, which means double the slow wave. And there's a red in the middle of the yellow that is triple the slow wave. So more than half of his brain is running abnormally. And it's the frontal lobe of the brain. This is the part that is your executive function. This is the part that has you discern information at a deep level. And so the part of the back of the brain, when we seem to have issues, the back of the brain seems to be more stable. And it makes sense because if you had to hedge your bets, you would wager to keep your eyes working and your heart working, so that you could survive in fight or flight. But as far as you being able to create or connect to your spirituality, you're not going to need to do that if you're fighting for your life. And that's why I think nature made the front of the lobe sort of adjustable, and you can turn it into power conserve mode. And that's what this person looks like. And that's what I see ADHD as. If we did a brain scan of your brain, for example, I think you would have something like this, because you were describing yourself as OCD. I see sort of like,
and chronic fatigue, immune dysfunction. That's why I'm on disability. Fatigue, anxiety, IBSD. So stomach issues.
I'm going to send you.
You're talking about me here.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Here we are. God and all things. Here we are. So I'm going to send you the same thing that we gave to Mike. So the left is before, the right is after. So in other words, we did some metabolites that help the brain, natural things that we sprayed in his nose, and on the right that normalized. So you see 75% of his brain is green, which is normal slow wave activity. The back of the brain is less. So red is more, but blue is less. So he has less slow wave activity. This is usually in people that have meditation with their eyes closed. But Mike has his eyes open in this case and is talking, saying, I feel great. This basically, I think the brain is supposed to look like this all the time. When it has metabolites it's supposed to have. When it's not sitting in believing trauma in all things, this is a brain of creativity, of calmness. His stomach pain went away. His anxiety almost goes down to zero. So I'm going to show you a person that actually experienced this firsthand, and you can hear her. But basically, she's a woman that lost her fire in the Palisades, lost her house in the Palisades fire. So she was without a house. This is an event in that was for the fire victims. It was in Venice, and they had asked me to come and support these people. So we were doing live blood analysis dysbiosis, and we were offering these sprays and metabolites for people under stress. She particularly was a great example because she was waiting in line for like 45 minutes, and then she had to go speak at the live broadcast. Well, it turns out that she was like next in line, and she was afraid that she was going to lose her chair. I'm going to make sure I'm actually sharing with the audio on. I am. Okay, good. So I'll go back to that. This will just take me a second to get to the right page, the right spot. So she was afraid she was going to lose her place in line. And I said, she said, hold my chair, and she leaves. And somebody sat in that chair. And when she came back, she lost her mind on me. She pointed me in the face. You told me. And I didn't say anything, by the way, when she said, hold my seat, but I was going to hold her place is how I heard it. And she's pointing at me and she's yelling at me. And I'm looking at her face and I'm seeing the rage in her face. And I'm like, wow, it's interesting. And there was another chair right next to that. And I said, sit here. You can be next. She sits down and she goes, fine. And I go, you know what? Let me just give you the metabolite spray now that we have that is for this kind of thing. And I spray her, and the image on the screen is a picture of her with a big smile on her face. Now, this woman still didn't get her house back, but she's now regulated the same way I regulated that brain scan that I was describing. And she's going to talk about how different she felt immediately after she got some of these metabolites, which are blocked when you have dysbiosis, bad bacteria and fungus in the gut. It seems you can't get this stuff to the brain very easily. So her pattern was very much probably what we saw in Mike in the slide. So here she's going to describe what happened after I sprayed her. And remember, she was yelling at me and she's Latin, I believe. With this Latin, rah, you know what I mean? Like, and then I spray her, and this is her immediately after, and she describes that I just gave it to her 60 seconds before. So check this out. All right, so here we are at the event to take care of people that have been infected by the fires, right? What's your name? Gabby. So Gabby, 2 minutes ago, what was your stress level? 12. And what is your stress level now?
-10. Yes, I've been evacuated for 10 days.
Wow.
And I hadn't felt this sense of peace until now. Yeah, thank you.
And we sprayed you literally how long ago?
A minute ago.
A minute ago. So we sprayed her a minute ago, and now she has a sense of peace, even after everything that happened.
Yes.
Yeah. If you would have seen her before, you'd be it's like, hey, it's my turn, right? Yeah. And now she's like, look at this.
Glowing.
Yeah, amazing. Great work. All right, here we go. So you can imagine how many of our brothers and sisters, and in my view, that we have 7 billion brothers and sisters that are going around not realizing when they're dysregulated, how they're dysregulated, how bad they're dysregulated. And what we do all day long is just like that. People come in and they have all sorts of things going on, and I don't care about the conditions names. I don't care about that. But what I care about is we find very specific things that are in the blood that are blocking people from having their best selves and having their connection to source, being able to discern information, to be able to dive deep into discussions and take new data in. That's what happens when the frontal lobe is down. That stuff is blocked. And if you're dealing with a major issue, let's say losing her house, we didn't give her house back. But she said, this is the first time I've had a sense of peace since the incident. And all we did is help reset her brain with some metabolites that are natural that weren't getting to her brain because of her blood. And we were able to do it through a little bit of a spray in the nose. This is something that I had made back in 2005, 2006. If I remember correctly, I think maybe 2006, and we put a patent application in, I think in 2008, because we just found so many conditions, so many things that were improving just because we put this in people. So that's one thing that we do. So it gives you an example of that.
Interesting.
I'm going to send you some, by the way. You're going to send me your address. I'm going to send it to you.
Oh,
I want to see what happens to you, my friend.
I would be interested to see, because I certainly don't feel, I try to force my brain to stay active. So I don't feel the cognitive decline as much yet, although my mother passed from
Oh, I'm sorry.
dementia a few
Yeah,
years
yeah,
ago.
yeah.
So I'm concerned about the cognitive and even why I push even more. So I force my brain and
To
the
keep going.
OCD. Yeah, the OCD part in a way
Hmm.
forces that too, whether I like my brain to constantly be going. It
Right.
is,
Yeah.
like it or not. That's
Well,
why I don't sleep well at night. Turning off the brain becomes a problem.
what I find that's going on in the brain that wants to stay active, even when you want to try to calm, the calm part is actually a very natural thing. Like we shouldn't actually feel stress. Stress is supposed to be really temporary. And if we're feeling it all the time, there is something wrong, in my view. Because when the brain looks green, like we had it on the screen, she still lost her home, and yet she was fine. And she even said she's glowing and she's grateful. Like that's amazing. So I guess I want to switch gears just for a second because you mentioned dementia, and I want to show you something that we found because the beliefs around this is to me is inaccurate. So one of the people that we worked on um, uh, was somebody that had very substantial, like she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and which is very similar, by the way. It looks a little different in the blood. But this is what her blood looked like. These cells are supposed to be all separate, but they're stacked. So what you're looking at is a set of cells that look like peas pushed together or held together like magnets, like metal peas held together with magnets. Well, they're all supposed to be out and open in order to move blood and to move oxygen to be able to exchange what it needs to exchange. When they're stacked like this, you can tell these things can't be working optimally. She described herself as being afraid to go outside. Her daughter was telling me she's agoraphobic, basically, and she's afraid, like what you described, that she was going to end up like her mother who died of it. So her daughter brought her, and in order for her to come, because she was agoraphobic, we had to clear everyone out of the space but me. She only wanted to deal with one person, and this is what her blood looked like. Well, 4 hours later, when we gave her some essentially roots that help to give energy to the cells. Well, that polarized the cells. And this was afterwards. And what you're seeing is like little bubbles that look perfectly clear, perfectly round, and they're sitting inside. So this was before, and which is stacked peas, and this is after. Her symptoms that she described were gone. Her anxiety was gone. Her memory issues, the way she was speaking changed. We have a video on her on that's on our YouTube channel too. You can actually look up. Her name's Karen, and you literally see her afterwards saying, "I just feel great, and this has been an amazing thing." This was 2 years ago. She's 78 now. We saw her when she was 76. I went to her Facebook page just to see how she was doing because we just don't even see her anymore. But this is what she looks like on Facebook. This is a picture of her with her hands out and her legs out, sitting on an alligator, having an artistic alligator. It's artistic, not autistic. That's a different kind of alligator. It's an antisocial alligator. So no, that's a terrible joke. But
Hey,
I'm just having fun.
We've got to keep a sense of humor
Yeah.
despite
That's all it is.
serious information.
Yes,
Or
I have a very deep respect for the community and all of us with our versions of autism that we turn into superpowers if we can. Anyway, so she traveled 8 times or 7 times that year when we popped her out, and she's been great ever since. Like I check in from time to time to see how she's doing. She's just doing great, and it only required 4 hours of work. So this whole concept of like plaques and things being behind it, there's a lot of evidence that shows that most people have plaques when they pass and they didn't even have the condition. So what we do see is if you look at under a microscope what's going on with the cells, I think there's more origin information you're going to find and how the cells are doing than if you're going to look at the body. And we see that all the time. We look at everything with a blood drop. You start with a drop of blood. and we finish with a drop of blood. And basically, we always our goal is to always get people to that level of where you see the cells totally open, and you get to understand what good blood feels like. The health of the blood is so overlooked. People don't realize what's going on. They look at lab results and see how many red blood cells they have. Well, it doesn't matter how many you have. I mean, it does, but what matters more is, are they charged? Is there polarization? Are they functioning well? There's no functional test to show how it's doing. Looking at it, seeing the person, making sure that the plasma is clear, making sure that they have proper energy in the body will give them, in my view, that full head, the full brain activity, and it feels totally different. I'm telling you, I'm going to send this to you. You're going to try this. You're going to be like, I can't believe how great I feel. This is one of
hope so.
many things. I love doing this because it's a great way that we can say, okay, guys, come back at another episode when I'm going to try this live, and let me tell you what happens. If people see people that they love and care about and they have a miraculous change, it creates a much better understanding and believability than hearing some guy talk about it. I know how hard it is to hear.
Yeah,
hey,
word
you
of
might
mouth
be
testimonial is always the
very
best.
important. And
Yes.
that's why on our channel, all I have is testimonies on it. Like, people say, what do you do? I go, just watch what people say, because you can see,
People become suspicious of, as you said, it can't be random strangers, because the conspiracy theory side of us always go to, well, those are paid testimonials. You paid them to say that, or they're getting something out of saying it, right?
I'm gonna show you the difference between the frontal lobe of the brain and the back of the brain. The back of the brain says, I don't want to believe. If it were true, everyone would be doing it. It says things like that. That's very primal fight or flight. The frontal lobe, if you're faced with information, let's say you had a family member that passed from it, and somebody tells you, I have something that had worked. The frontal lobe does this. The frontal lobe goes, oh, well, how many people have you had that have had that condition? And then how many have not had it once they left? And then, do you have phone numbers of people that I can call, because I'd like to talk to some of those people? Or what other evidence do you have? Or is it possible that I could come to your location and just watch this a few times before I decide? That's how the front of the lobe discerns. This is how I had to discern what to go after and what not to go after, or else you go down every rabbit hole on the planet. Like, for example, somebody said to me at one point, oh, you need to try CoQ10 in your kid. It's very important. And this is at an autism conference, and it's a woman that had a child with autism. So how do I discern if it's true or not? Now, if I just go fight or flight, I go, I don't know, I'll see. Or, I don't know, maybe I'll wait till a scientist says it on the screen. But no, I have a woman in front of me that is giving me a piece of data. Now, I'm going to qualify the data. I learned about qualification when I was a kid doing telephone sales. And I had a boss that said, listen, if somebody says they want to buy something, ask them these 4 questions. How quick do you need it? Are you willing to pay more to get it fast? And if I get it at a higher price, and you give them a price that's high, and you say, if I could find it today at this kind of price, would you buy it? I qualified his need rather than just saying, okay, I'm going to work for free and I'll bring the information back. And they go, well, can you get it less expensive? You qualify, you ask questions, you learn what people's decision making is. Now, here's how I qualify someone telling me CoQ10 is great. I say, okay, well, what were you doing with the CoQ10? In other words, what were you trying to change? And and maybe they don't even know, which tells me that's not good information. But if they say, well, CoQ10 helps to open up the cells, and we understand that the cells have problems in our kids because of autoimmunity, and I was looking for symptoms of him having more energy and possibly more clarity, and I got it. If I would have heard something like that, I would have been like, I'm going to go now to the science when I get back home. I'm going to see if it's possible. I want to take a look at the possible risks. I want to take a look at the possible rewards, but that's worth looking at. So here was my trick question. It wasn't a trick question. It was like, I'm like a detective in a way. I just said, okay, well, great. Oh, by the way, how's your kid doing? And she goes, well, it's been really hard, and, we're making some progress, but and I immediately go, that's not for me. because I'm interested in a result of where my child got better. And I'm willing to turn any stone over if someone has a result that I got. I don't think a mom's going to lie to me and say, "Oh, my kid's perfect and you should try the same thing." I'm going to hedge my bets. It's like risk versus reward. It's like risk analysis in business. Do it logically. Learn how to ask questions, see answers, and think. So if I don't know how to determine truth when it's in front of me, like if you say something and I can't qualify it as being true, it's my fault. It's because I don't have the capacity or the programming in the frontal lobe of my brain to discern truth. And that is present all over the place in the world. I was able to discern truth. I was able to read patterns because I was looking for something that no one else had. I wanted a fully recovered child, and the evidence was sort of there that people can get better. Well, good, I'm going to go after it, but I only want a recovered child. So in other words, I'm only going to receive information from a doctor, a researcher, or a parent that had something similar. And if they had, I'm going to listen, I'm going to interview them, I'm going to get into the details. What brand was it? What time of day did you do it? What kind of dosing was it? When did you see an effect? Did you see any negativity? Did you, at any point, what was too much? I'm going to dig into that detail to find out exactly what they did if the signs are there and I could discern it was worthwhile. So most people just go, when they hear something like this, they say, well, I don't know. And I look at them and I go, that's a frontal lobe that's not activated, or they haven't learned the process of discernment. Because what I would do in that situation, if someone said, my mom died of Alzheimer's, I'm a little concerned about it, I'm a little off, and I have some stuff, I would be saying, how many? How often are you nailing it? How would you like to prove to me that it's real? Okay, so you got some testimonials. Can I get some phone numbers? Can I get one person I can talk to? Can we do a group Zoom where I can see with my own eyes? I can see the diagnosis on a piece of paper. I can look at the person and say they don't have it. If you have that, then you go, this is worth looking for, worth going to, standing next to him and watching him do it to somebody. Like, you can take it level by level to discern truth. But in our society today, what we end up doing is, because we've had trauma, because we've had letdowns, we decide to shut everything down. And that's what we do with our hearts. If we have a pain in our heart, we shut our heart down. No, the heart's an incredible tool. It's just our brain didn't know how to process it. So learning how to dig into information, discern, figure out what's true through signs and through patterns and through proof that you can validate in other places. Not that, you can even have a scientist that says, I have a peer-reviewed, double-blind placebo study that was put into 6 journals. But if his motive was not right, in other words, if he's looking to prove a medicine for the sake of money, then you can ask science any question. You can determine how you're going to evaluate science, and you can also get science published in places that have motives different than what I want for my kid. Learning how to discern was absolutely life and death important when it came down to understanding how to approach my child. And I don't discount that, because if I would have looked at the entire set of medical literature about the condition, there were tens of thousands of studies that said all sorts of things. But because I could click on the author's name and see, were they just looking at vitamins? Were they just chasing after the root causes of the condition? Did they get, did they find biology behind the condition that could be changed? If I just looked at those things and avoided anyone, this is all about, drugs and trying to promote. Okay, so let's move that out. Because I was able to discern it, I knew what rabbit holes to invest in. And that process led me to a result that most people didn't have. I didn't think it was a big deal. It felt very natural to me. But looking back, many people didn't make it. And the mistakes they made mostly were the fact that they did not have a relatively regulated brain, and they didn't know how to ask the questions to determine what's true or not. A detective can figure out a lot when he goes to a place and he's even being lied to, or he has a lack of evidence. How? He asks questions, he watches behaviors, he uses his experience, he asks again, he sees if things are consistent, he communicates with other people that have been through the same situation, and from that they determine determine the details of truth. We have to do that if we want to expand our reality beyond headlines and narratives. We need to be able to do that in our own life and our own world. And it's a little hard when you're dysregulated. So I'm going to send you some spray and then see how you feel. See how I brought it back to the I'm going to send spray thing.
Yeah. Well, what you were saying again, a lot of times we try different things, and as you said, we become conditioned to be disappointed and therefore skeptical of everything else. And as you said, underlying motives, one never knows.
Remember that story. If we're gonna, I can't believe I'm actually able to pull like biblical stories, because I don't study it, right? It's not my thing per se. I have a very strong faith, but I don't study. But that story that says, God, please send me, it's the person in the water, please send me help, and a boat goes by and this goes by. That's that. Because in the midst of static, the things that didn't happen, and I get people here that have spent $1 million, $2 million traveling the world trying to find something, and they lived 2 towns over, and they end up coming and we nail it. This happens very frequently, and they're like, I cannot believe, that I did all that and all I needed to do is this. We need to know in the midst of static what is true. And if we cancel everything out, in other words, if everyone says, well, I'm a skeptic, you're essentially cursing yourself to not learn new information. So rather than that, and having me be responsible for all your trauma of skepticism, you being responsible to listen to the tone, listen to the truth that you feel inside your heart, being able to ask me questions to qualify, is the difference between you having the boat pick you up and you watching the one go by. So that's all I want to say. Everyone should be, rather than being skeptical, yes, you've had failures. Use those failures to your advantage. What questions didn't you ask? How could you have figured it out beforehand? You need to build your skills like an art of learning truth, more so than just saying, I'm a skeptic, because that's just a lazy man's way of saying, I'm just going to wait 20 years until somebody proves it enough. But believe me, even if
and then that's a lost 20 years if you live those 20 years.
And plus, imagine this, imagine the president of the United States coming out today and saying, we have solved this thing if you just take this thing, or you should not do this thing. There's already controversy of them trying to do that in some way. And there's an equal war against and for, and a lot of it is just, it's all like emotion and hate, and I've been hurt before. It's all this, fight or flight reaction, back of the brain stuff. We need to move our decision making forward. We need to be responsible for everything that happens in our lives and know that truth is in the room at all times. This is my connection to God. There is a truth in this room that's available to me at all times if I'm willing to see it. And there's also distruths in the room. If I'm willing to discern, I'll be able to figure out the signal that's coming. And that's how I see God in all things, is that truth is available. And if it's not easy, it's not true. If it's not simple, it's not true. If I complicate things, I will miss it. But if I want my connection to God, or if I want my connection to truth, I'm the one responsible for seeing it. That's my free will. And if I go by, well, I've been hurt, I don't want to try again, I don't want to try love again if I've been hurt. It's like, no, you missed the message about what happened last time, and you're not able to see something when it's in your face. I see it all the time. And all I can tell you is, a combination of some desperation and almost giving up, and realizing that people are in such a bad place they're willing to give it a shot or give something a try. That's usually how people come in the door. Or they said, oh my God, I just heard my aunt had this and she doesn't have it anymore. Like I had an 89-year-old woman from the Native community come in, and she was taking 4 insulin injections a day. She hasn't taken one since. And so she's going to tell that story. And I'm not saying I cured anything. I can tell you that what I did is I helped her have her best health. And in that, she no longer has the same types of sugar issues she had in the past. So I could say that all day long, but unless you can follow up with some questions or trust your instinct, the thing in you that says he just might have something, he doesn't seem to be motivated to cause harm, or motivated for ego or money, and you feel something, there's the heart that'll give you an intuition, but there's also the frontal lobe of the brain that can say, how many times does that happen? How often do you see it happen? Is that replicatable? Can I come to your place and watch you do it one time? And all those answers are yes. And if that's the case, honestly, people should just hit stop on their computer right now, close the door, and go get a plane ticket. That's how it should be. But we're limited. We only see 0.3% of reality. That's what science says. We're very limited, and plus that you can't remember the sentence I said 3 sentences ago word for word. So we're limited in memory. So our perception of reality is what we rely on for our comfort. And we've created a perception of I've been hurt, I don't know how to make a good decision, and I just don't know truth. And people stay in that space, and eventually you just, fall off the planet because of that. But if you say to yourself, I want to learn 0.31%, and I'm gonna take initiative to ask questions and to qualify information, just like I did when I was on the phones. I was the top performing person on the phones. I learned how to ask questions. I learned how to put in work to get my rejections, to get to one person that says yes. I'm willing to put in my work to search 1,000 things. I spend every month thousands of dollars on something I'll never use, because when I test it, I see it doesn't work, because I'm discerning, and I'm not going to use something on that isn't the best in the world from everything that I do. But I keep looking for something that I have not found, because I really love the exploration of finding something that other people are too lazy to even find. So anyway, that's my little take on skepticism. Skepticism should mean I want to know more. I want to see if it's true. I'm not going to believe something from the start, but I'm very interested in hearing more. That's healthy. But if you say I'm a skeptic, therefore I'm not going to believe anything new, and that's really what people are saying most of the time. That's like, well, there, let me know how it works out for you, because there's no reason for me to speak, because you're not asking me questions to figure out what I am. So that means you have free will to decide who I am. I'm not going to change that. I don't want to. I've learned that I'm responsible for me only. But if you ask me some questions, and you ask me questions that are there to determine truth, I'll sit with you all day long and tell you everything I can to help you determine how to do the best things for you in your life.
Well, time has flown, and there's not enough time in a day to ask all the questions that need to be asked. And we already established you do have a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Do you have a website for
No.
indeed people seeking answers to questions? No,
I have. I'll tell you what I do, because I don't try to convince and I don't try to market, but I definitely give enough breadcrumbs for people to determine truth if they want. The one place to go where I have maybe 250 videos of people talking about their experience. That is stansrecoveries.com. Stansrecoveries.com. You can go there. If you want to know more and hear more things from me, if you want to learn about the process more, you can go to my link tree, which is stanslinks.com. So it's stansrecoveries.com and stanslinks.com. And I enjoyed this, by the way. I mean, you push a few buttons at me, and I've got lots of energy to be able to and I don't mean to offend anybody. I know it's very hard. We don't know how unwell we are until we feel well sometimes. And our spirit kind of does tell us, like, I wish there was more. I feel like there's more. What's going on? Those things can help guide you to getting your best health. I want all of our brothers and sisters, our 7 billion brothers and sisters out there, to have their full brain, to have their compassion, to have their access to source easier, to be able to discern better and make the best decisions they can for them, for their family. Because if we all had it, honestly, I think a majority of the issues we have, the war, the fighting, the anger, the rage towards each other, a lot of that stuff is unnatural. It's not a normal thing. And I think humans are supposed to be compassionate and patient and calm all the time, logical, problem solvers, puzzle masters.
One question I do want to ask before we go is, you've hinted at it. It sounds like you're talking organics and natural substances, yes?
Yeah. Yes, and sometimes technology, like I have some technology from the 1800s. God
gave us all these things, and we're not using them.
I have some lasers that we invented ourselves. So there's no drugs here. That's the answer. There's no drugs.
That's the other thing I was going to bring up. The big pharma, everything synthetic, based on things out of nature. Well, if this is derived from honey or then the original thing is obviously better.
Yeah.
The natural organic thing is obviously better if you're trying to copy it synthetically. And so there's always the big pharma trying to poo-poo the homeopathic, let's call it, methods.
Yeah, and the real truth behind the scenes is that the study shows 70% of medicine today is based on things that came from the Amazon originally. But part of the issue is the motives too, because the motive, like a friend of mine from Yale, a doctor, said, what they taught us in med school is to name things, blame them, and tame them. That's pretty much what they taught us. And so if the motive is to not necessarily take care of root causes, but to make people feel a little better, that's a motive that you can get from a place like
Treat
Amazon,
the symptoms rather than, yes.
So some things we've gone back to the Amazon and said, well, what experience do you guys have in taking care of the actual root causes? Because the Amazon has places for that too. That stuff just didn't get pulled. So some things we literally pull from the Amazon that have root cause effects and holistic effects to help people actually be better. And that is part of our approach, is that we're literally just trying to restore the body to the way that God meant it to be, without the interference of things that may be not as heart-filled as we are for our children or for ourselves.
Yep. Well, thank you, Stan Kurtz. It was a wonderful discussion. With all my guests, we could go for 3 days and then it'd be way too long. No one will watch or listen. Right? Today's Twitter attention span, I call it. Everybody wants the headline, even though the headline might be deceiving. Exactly. Give me the soundbite, even though the soundbite might be out of context. Details matter. So I will again refer people to stansrecoveries.com and stanslinks.com to indeed do some of your own, as Stan said, skeptical, but not cower in the corner, kind of giving up kind of skeptical, an inquisitive skepticality.
I love curiosity. I love questions, and I feel bad when people are in that place where they've given up, and because people, you don't deserve it. You deserve more, and you deserve your full self. And if you feel that inside, and you wanna find out more, come study, come take a look at what we have online. And if that makes a difference for you, if you feel it, then reach out and we'll do the rest.
Okay, I'm going to hit stop on the record now, or again, we'll keep going and going and going like an Energizer bunny, right?
Good work. Thanks for having me on.
Like and subscribe to Constitutionalist Politics Podcast and share episodes. We need your help. Thank you for having tuned into another Constitutionalist Podcast show. I really appreciate that you stopped by. Again, please like, share, subscribe. We need you to help spread the Constitutionalist movement. Thank you again. Take care. God bless. Love you all.